Okay, so again, this is a little bit of repetition on the methodology. You saw it yesterday. Zach's given a very good outline this morning on infrastructure and everything else. So this is just, I guess, my take on working with rusts and maintaining a repository of races and storing those isolates. You would have noticed, I think, and this point was made yesterday, that Dr. Sharma's laboratory here in Kumultar does things a bit differently to the way that Zach does it in his lab, to the way I do it, the way probably Java does it and anyone else that's working on Rust. Basically what we have to do, there are some basic principles, obviously, in working with Rust, but we have to improvise and use what's locally available to come up with solutions to problems we face. Like, for example, lack of availability of liquid nitrogen or something like that. If you can't get liquid nitrogen, you've got to find a different way to store Rust. So we all have different ways of doing this, and I thought I'd just give you a little bit of insight into the way we do this. Some of the methods that we use are the same as Zach and Dr. Sharma. Some of them are different. So we have people that go out and look for rust every year. They send us the samples in these paper bags. We've stressed this about 3 or 4 times, I think, never in plastic. We send these envelopes out to people. They can write all the information on the outside and then send it in to us. What we like to see is a sample like this. If you want to know what a good sample of rust is, stem rust, that's what we like to see sent in. Often it's 1 pustule and then you've got work to do. But if it's a good sample like this with plenty of rust on it, then it's easy, much easier to work with. How do we get the rust off those? Well, some laboratories, when they're doing race analysis, will actually go through a cycle of establishing single pustule isolates and then do the race analysis, then do the pathotype analysis. We just use a bulk. So we will take a sample like that from the field, put it in some mineral oil, mix it up. Of course, there's far too much oil in that tube now to inoculate a plant. You'll kill a plant if you try and put that amount of oil onto it. So we often just let it sit for a few minutes and the rust will actually sediment out, and we can then decant off a lot of that, and we end up with a small amount of oil with rust in it that we can then use to inoculate. This is just a way of getting as many spores off the sample as you possibly can. The system that we use, very, very basic. We use what we call Jetpacks. It's just a pressure pack can with a bridge and then a plastic tube that goes down into here and sprays that onto the plants. Unlike the system that Zach is using and a lot of other people are using, this produces very coarse droplets of oil, and those droplets of oil will burn the plants if you're not very, very careful. So we always spray this above the plants and allow the rust just to drop onto the plants from there rather than putting the oil directly onto the plants. Always a problem to try and find equipment like this. One of my colleagues once came into work with I think it came from a thing of deodorant that he'd bought and had run out from a supermarket. And we actually used one of these things to inoculate just to see how it would work. And it worked. It's just got a pump action. And you can buy those things quite often if you buy deodorant or you buy other things that are atomised. You can keep the container when you're finished, rinse it out properly, of course, but use that to pump a suspension of rust onto some plants. So that's a very cheap alternative. It's not ideal. If you're doing lots of inoculations, your finger's going to get sore, but it does work, and you can use it just for small inoculations. Zach, I think you showed this morning, did you?
Yeah, that's a better picture, I think.
Okay, so these are some pictures from Dr. Fetch in Canada. This is a system that he uses. Eugene uses this. Zach uses it. I've been trying to get my group in Sydney to adopt this for about the last 10 years. I keep telling them we've got to get these things and use them because they really are good. They cost a bit of money. You've got to go to a place where these things can be made, but they have a gelatin capsule that Zach talks about where you have your rust and your inoculum. It just goes on the bottom, and when the air pressure comes through here, all you need to do is put your finger on the top like that and it blocks it, and the suspension is blown out of here, and you can see that here. Extremely fine mist, does not burn the plants because it's so fine, and you can use very small quantities of rust and inoculate plants using this method. Our method tends to be a little more wasteful. We need more rust, but this is a highly efficient way of inoculating plants. places that you can buy those now, Zach. I think you have a workshop that makes them,
Yeah.
and I think Eugene has a supplier, and they're what, about $30 or $40 each?
Yeah,
Does
they're
that sound-
expensive, yeah.
Yeah. That sounds expensive, but these things will last for years and years and years. You can do thousands of inoculations with them, and if you spread that cost out over a period of time,
We got them manufactured in Pakistan, was like $1.50 or $1.
is that so?
But they were not like standard. And some of them they threw more, some of them
Okay.
threw less.
So the quality wasn't as good. Yep. But I really like this system. It does work very, very well, and it's a very efficient way of putting rust on plants.